Keep things moving along here. Keep things moving along. Everybody sitting in the corner bullshit.
No. Oh, God bless you. Thank you. I'd like to call the Public Service Committee meeting to order, please. All members are present. Do I have a motion on the minutes from last week? I have a motion for approval. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none. I don't see, okay, we have one thing on our old agenda in public service. Did you still want to take time on that? Okay, alrighty, then we will continue to take time on that one. And numbers 2, 3, and 4, Mr. Clerk will take time on that until they come before the Equalization Board, I imagine. Okay, and that's it for our old agenda, and now we'll move into the items on our new agenda. And we have number 5 under Public Service. This is an ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini, 2018, Phase 1 and 2, residential resurfacing program by resurfacing such streets with asphalt concrete, 402/404, and declaring an emergency. Hi, Mr. Luddle. Would you like to share with us?
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. These next 3 pieces, this one and the next 2, are just from last year's resurfacing program. So the year's been up, and it's time to assess the people who haven't paid. Some of them got letters and paid. These are the ones that are going to be assessed.
And so, as we have done for as long as I can remember, we are always we wait a year before we assess. So this isn't anything new here.
Correct.
And it's according to the procedures we've had in the past.
Correct.
Okay, are there any comments or questions from the committee? Hearing and seeing none? Are there any comments or questions from members of council that are in the chambers? No? Okay, what is your pleasure?
Consent would be fine.
Do I have a motion for consent on this first piece? I have a motion for consent and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be placed on our consent agenda. Okay, number 6 under Public Service. Ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini, 2018, Phase 1, 2, and 3, unimproved street resurfacing program by treating the surface thereof with substances designed to preserve the surface and declaring an emergency. And as Mr. Little mentioned, this is going to be similar, the next couple ones of these, and this is according to how we have proceeded in the past. Are there any questions from the members of council on the committee? Are there questions from any members of council in the chambers? Hearing and seeing none, consent?
Consent would be fine.
Okay. Is there a motion for consent by the committee? I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be placed on the consent agenda. Number 7 under Public Service. Ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of certain streets between certain termini, 2018 Phase 1, 2, 3 arterial collector program by resurfacing such streets with asphalt concrete, 402/404, and declaring an emergency. Nothing more to add?
No more to add.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, any questions from council members? Seeing none, would this be on the consent agenda?
Consent would be fine.
Do I have a motion for consent? I have a motion. Do I have a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, that passes on the consent agenda. Number 8 under Public Service. Ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts with Cascade Valley LLC for the construction of roadway, storm, and sanitary sewers and water mains as part of the Hickory Street Phase 3 development and declaring an emergency. Mr. Lotto.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. The Cascade Valley LLC, they're improving down there on Hickory Street near the dog park. So they are taking the existing allotment and they're extending the two center streets that are parallel with Hickory. They're extending them to the north. They're not connecting the Memorial Parkway, they're just extending them. So this is authorized them to put in water mains, sanitary and storm sewers to extend that project. And there's no cost to the city.
Oh, okay, that's good. Are there any questions from the members of the committee? Any questions from members of council? Seeing none, what is your
Consent would be fine.
Okay. Do I have a motion for consent on number 8? I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to number 9. This is an ordinance determined to proceed with the improvement of Tallmadge Avenue between the termini of North Main Street and Gorge Boulevard by paving, grading, constructing, and reconstructing curbs, concrete sidewalks, and driveway approaches, installing roof drain pipes, planting trees, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. This is our project, like you said, on Tallmadge Avenue from North Main up to the Expressway or Gorge Boulevard. We are going to remove the old International Institute, realign Dayton Street, and then we're going to realign, a slight realignment of Patterson Avenue in this project. So this is the legislation to proceed with the construction of this project.
Are there any questions or comments from the members of the committee? Councilman Fusco. Okay. Mr. Clerk, would you please add Councilman Fusco's name to this piece? That's number 9.
Number 9, okay.
Yes. Any comments or questions from members of council? Okay, Councilwoman Sims.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you could just refresh my memory on that, what's the STP funding?
That's a transportation block grant. So it's surface transportation grant that's through ODOT. ODOT's funding that.
So
It's an ODOT project, yes, since it's a state route.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Mobian.
You may have answered my question. So you said remove the institute. Someone is going to demolish it?
Yes,
These funds is including these
Yes.
funds, and we're not using any of our dollars?
well, there is some geo component of this, yes.
The 93,000?
Well, if you look over, the total is 639,000, all the way to the right. You see the 93, if you carry that over?
Yes, 639, okay.
Yes.
Okay. But the building itself, we don't own the building, do we?
No, no.
Okay. So you're going to tear that down and...
And then the building just to the north of it, you know, as you come past Jennings, and what will happen is you're traveling south on Dayton, you'll kind of meander over a little bit to the west and line up with Dayton on the south, or on the south side there.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Anyone else? Councilwoman Sims.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. On this total $6,300, $639, is part of that for the demolition of the building? I mean, what portion of?
I don't believe, I think part of that's just the roadway improvements.
So all of the 600 plus thousand is just for roadway?
Well, I think it's 80-20 match, so you have to put up 20% of the federal dollars.
20% of the
$2,756,000.
is that 20%?
No, that's more than 20%. But in that 639, 20% of the match. We have design costs in there, we have engineering costs in there, we have inspection costs in there also.
So I'm just out of curiosity, I understand the STP dollars for the the roadways, but where is the demolition of the building at?
This is Mike Tiadecki from engineering. Overall, the earlier part over on the left of the money already spent paid for the design, preliminary engineering, traffic modeling, and right-of-way cost. So with all of the right-of-way cost with this project, a portion of that was covered by STP, the federal state component of it, and the city has a 20% match to that, but this number, we didn't break down in detail for this, what you're seeing here, to specifically the right-of-way cost. So while some of the earlier money spent included right-of-way and was funded by STP and a GO component, it's not clear here what it is, but overall we have a 20% share to the match. But that was part of the right-of-way cost, was the purchase and the demolition of that will be covered in part by GO and in part by STP, which is the federal money.
So let me try and find my way through here. So what was the cost of the demolition of the building? Maybe I can...
We don't have that number yet. We haven't bid that part of the job out.
I'll get you that number once we bid it, and I'll get you the fund.
So here's my last question, because I'm
Sure.
really trying to understand this because it's not very clear. So are we saying on the $2,388, the 639 represents the 20% match?
If you take the $2,756,000 from the ODOT, 20% of that is probably, it's like $540,000, okay? So we had to come up with a 540 to make the match, and then we have extra cost that's why it says 639. We had other costs in there. So 20% of the ODOT money is 540, but our total GO is 639. So I can get you what that other money was. We had to come up with the 20% to match.
It would make probably a little more sense to me if I was saying 20% match for whatever road construction, and here are the dollars, and this is what we need to match for. So what I can't seem to find is the actual demolition of the building, I guess, if that was kind of clear. And
if you look down below, it says land acquisition, $481,000. I'll get you those numbers, the breakdowns, what the cost was.
Okay, so in the land acquisition,
Yes.
is the demolition of the building in there?
We'll purchase the building, and then we have, the demo is in there also, yes.
So, okay, I'll look for
I'll get those numbers for you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing and seeing none, what is your pleasure?
Well, we really need to award this because of the ODOT dollars. Okay, we're about a month behind in this project, so we would like passage today on it.
And when can the councilwoman expect these?
I'll have it to her before tonight.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, there has been a request for suspension of the rules. I have a motion, and I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this would be listed as suspension of the rules. 9A is a resolution opposing the passage of Ohio General Assembly House Bill 163, which unfairly and unreasonably denies municipalities the right to control their own utility rates, interferes with mutually beneficial arm's-length negotiations between peer communities, and penalizes cities like Akron by depriving them of local government funds and other important funding assistance and declaring an emergency. Who would like to?
I'm happy to kick off. Thank you, Ms. Keith. This is just basically a resolution that I would request that this be sent to our JED partners, and I think anyone that we sell water to, really, because it would have an effect on them as well, I do believe, but especially the JEDs, I believe. This House Bill 163, from what I understand, from what it calls for, please correct me, you guys have dove into this much further than I, but In essence, it provides for significant penalties. They're calling it cuts, but it's penalties in essence. Whenever there's a negotiated between communities for utilities, negotiated, just as our JEDs, and just as our JEDs was voted on by the residents, in which, if I understand that correctly, the JEDs back in the day, that was voted on by Springfield, Coventry, all of our other partners out there, Bath, all of our other partners out there. We negotiated with them. Their residents approved the JED. As a result of those JEDs, many recreational facilities was constructed. This is something that was negotiated in good faith between the communities. And now the state is wanting to intervene, and I'm not even sure what the motivation is. I kind of have my suspicions, but I don't want to say that publicly. But again, this would provide significant penalties and cuts, from what I understand, possibly cuts to the local government fund and other funding sources from the state of Ohio, just due to the simple fact that here we have an agreement between communities to supply them with utilities that we have available to us, and to have an agreement that benefits both communities, and to basically intervene again. This is a further erosion of our home rule, and I would simply ask that this be sent not only to our JED partners, but also to the county, to other cities throughout Ohio, to draw attention to this in hopes that they too would step up and pass a similar resolution that would send a clear message to the other cities that would have an adverse effect should HB 163 be passed.
Thank you. Is there anyone from our...
The only thing I'd like to add is when he said penalties, it would preclude us from being eligible for some of the state loan funds, okay? So we're getting a lot of state loan funds at 0% interest currently, and if this passes, then we possibly would not be eligible for those funds.
That's huge.
Yes.
Anything else that anyone on the panel would like to share with us? But thank you, Mr. Little, for sharing that.
We'll say that. We really appreciate your support. This is very important to us as a utility.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions from members of council? The committee will go first, so please.
I have a question. I'm very familiar with this House bill, and as it's tracked its way through the General Assembly, which started way back in February, I've been in contact with one of the ranking members. What I'm trying to understand is there's quite a few townships that seem to have gotten on board with support of this, which is kind of troubling. So I'm trying to figure out what that part is about. Of course, I too am in support of the opposition, but I'm trying to figure out is why didn't it come through utilities? And it came through utilities in the General Assembly. Seems like we would follow suit with what they're doing in Columbus. So if it came through utilities in Columbus, why aren't we sending it down through utilities? And if we're not going to send it down through utilities, I think we need to send it to all the ranking members and the members of the Utilities Committee in Columbus as well. So just a thought, because I think they need to be aware of what we're doing here, because it is through the Public Utilities Committee in Columbus, and also I think we need to be figuring out why these townships testified in support of this, because this just happened. Just a thought.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Neal, Councilwoman Amobian. Councilwoman Amobian, he's graciously allowed you to go first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think most of us heard about this for the first time when the executive director from Ohio Municipal League came. And based on what I recall from what he shared with us, is that the legal part of this, I think, would have to be initiated by one of our negotiating partners. That if we, no, it doesn't? I can't. No, I mean, in order to trigger for instance, the relationship we have with Bath, Fairlawn, Copley, whomever we have the JEDs with. And he mentioned that if these negotiated profits, or whatever you want to call them, that we earn from this is more than 25%, then they could challenge it based on this regulation, this law, and that if we did not reduce whatever amount we were charging to that amount, then they would take funds away from whatever state funds we would get from them, as opposed to challenging us directly. They would just zap us that way. Am I so far correct in what my understanding is?
So I can address the process of it. The process would be initiated by a complaint filed against the city of Akron by an outlying jurisdiction. So you are correct about that.
Okay.
But it would only take one jurisdiction to do that. Not all of them need to sort of gang up on you. And one adverse ruling could then impact your entire share of the local government fund, or your ability to get the reduced rates and or loans from OWDA and things like that, OEPA.
Okay. So do we know what our percentage is now? Is more than 25%?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the 25%. What is your question about the
When he
percentage?
came in, and I think he threw 25% out as part of what was being discussed in committee. I don't know if that was the final percentage, but do we know what our percentage is in terms of what we charge? Because we put in sewage lines, water lines, whatever, to help these townships and cities out. As a result of that, when there are retail markets or whatever on these projects, we get a percentage or return. And our return now is, I know we generate something like 16 million a year from all these jets. I'm not really sure what that comes out to be.
Yeah, so the short answer is it doesn't really matter what the city of Akron charges the other jurisdictions. The way the bill is written, if we charge them anything over what we charge our residents, then that triggers the penalty. Or if the service is tied to the condition of payment, i.e. sharing of income tax or other payments, it triggers it. Either one triggers the penalty. So if we are doing it, or we are engaging in either one of those practices, we could be found a non-compliant municipality under the bill.
Even though these cities and townships that we are negotiating with and working with are not complaining, the state is saying that, here's what you should be charged by the city of Akron, or whatever the revenue stream should be coming back to Akron.
Well, the only other thing I'd point out is that we serve multiple communities, not just the JED communities. So the JED communities are Copley, Bath, Fairlawn, Springfield, and Coventry. We also serve, Mogador, and we serve parts of Hudson. We serve Stowe. If one of those municipalities were to sue us, then again, it could trigger those penalties that would affect us overall. It's not just the JEDs.
And you think we have a prayer? Is there anybody lobbying on our behalf or with us?
Yes.
I would imagine that the large cities would be.
Yes, we're all getting together.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm in opposition against this as well. It would be nice to know more about do we know how we came up with our figure or what we're charging?
Typically, it's cost of service, how far we're pumping, that type of thing.
And
But they're all different. Some of them, we own the water lines, some they own the water lines.
Okay. Is there an administrative overhead or something that's charged as well?
Not really, no.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Neal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Councilwoman Amobian spoke to, I think this puts in perfect perspective why it's important to be a part of Ohio Municipal League. because it was when Executive Director Ken Scarrett came and shared with us that he brought this to our attention. And it's, you know, although we have a voice, our voice is stronger when we combine it with our sister cities that are also a part of the league. So I would just say that we utilize that membership. As Councilwoman Samples mentioned, she's been following it. You know, reach out, use the league, connect with the cities, other cities that are in opposition, so that we can leverage our voice. There's no sense in us recreating the wheel. It's the reason why the league was created, municipal league was created. Let's use that resource and that leverage that we have, because again, it was when he came here and shared with us some of the benefits of being a part of the league that at least this body was made aware. And so it just shows the, you know, one of the immediate benefits of us being associated with it. And so with that, I just, again, I urge us to reach out to Mr. Scarrett and see if there's a special committee under the league that is working on this so that we can work hand in hand with them. Thank you.
Sir, we could bring you up to speed. We've been working on this for several months with our own internal.
Again, sir, I'm not saying you haven't been working on it,
Okay.
but this body here was made aware of it when we were deliberating the value of being a part of the Ohio Municipal League. It was at that time that he made us aware of what was going on and what the league was doing to combat it. And even at that point, and it may be through what he shared with us as far as the mayor being a part of the Mayor's Association, that again, when you work collaboratively with other cities, Akron by itself may have a voice, but we're not going to move the barometer. Because I'm sure if you look at those who are pushing this, you will see a partisan push on why this is taking place. Unfortunately, politics messes up everything. There's a difference between the political process and politics. I'm sure when you look at why this is being pushed, there's a true partisan divide. So, working with the league, they will help us, you know, negotiate with others so that we can get this pushed. I'm not saying you guys didn't know, but I'm saying this body, the legislative body, had no clue until he came and shared that with us. So that's why it's important for us to work through that so that we can cut through the politics as much as possible and address the real issue. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else in the chamber who wants to speak on this resolution in particular? Hearing and seeing none, what is your pleasure?
Consent would be fine.
Consent. Do you have a motion for consent? A second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Is there anything else to come before this committee? Hearing and seeing none, we are dismissed.
Consortium. Let me know time or something. All right, we're going to go ahead and move forward with public safety meeting. We're going to call this to order. We are running behind, so everyone is present that's on the committee. Can I get approval of the last time we held a meeting? The minutes, please. Motion. We have all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, thanks. We have two new pieces in front of us today. Our first piece is authorizing the mayor to apply for and, if awarded, accept and expend Project Safe Neighborhoods funding from the Northern Ohio Violent Crime Consortium to support the Akron Hotspot Initiative and declare an emergency. We have Deputy Mayor of Public Safety Charlie Brown. If you don't mind introducing everybody that's going to speak, I'd appreciate it.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. To my left is Major Jesse Leeser. He's Deputy Chief of the Investigative Subdivision. And then Carol McCullough is our law enforcement planner, and she works in community relations, or planning and research, planning and research.
Thank you.
So she has the most knowledge, along with the major. So if you have any questions about it, or if you need some more clarification, please don't hesitate to ask.
All right, good. If you don't mind, start out with a little explanation, and we'll go from there.
Sure thing. So as I know you all are aware, we got a sexual assault kit initiative grant in 2018 that primarily funded the Akron Police Department for three... Right, in 2018. Oh, sorry. You asked me about that, and then it was in my head. I'll switch to the one that is relevant. Sorry about that. So for this one, we were asked to identify hotspots within the city. One is in the area of Copley, and one is in the area of Arlington. These are the two that had the highest number of violent offenses. So that's going to be felonious assault with a weapon, discharging a firearm, those sorts of violent things. So the plan really is to provide APD with the overtime necessary in multiple departments. So they'll be approaching it from an agency-wide perspective to spend time in these two hot spots. So you will have patrol spending additional time in the hot spots. You'll have the gun violence reduction team spending time in the hot spots, and they'll all be doing their own work to try and address this problem. I don't know if you want to talk about the specifics of what people will be doing.
Sure. Part of it is going to be a community initiative that we had not addressed before, so we'll have meetings in those areas to find out how the violence is affecting them, what's their perceptions of what we're doing in the community, what else we can do that we're not filling, if there's any gaps. As Carol stated, it's going to be data-driven, so we'll take the information on the most violent areas in the city dealing with gun violence. Then we'll use our AVB in conjunction with some collaborative efforts with the FBI, the ATF, the Adult Parole Authority, and also the Summit County Prosecutor's Office to work on the other end with the implementation, the enforcement action, and also the prosecutions.
All right, thanks. I do got one question before I ask the committee questions. I know you mentioned Copley Road in Arlington. Do we have like a boundary, like Arlington? I can picture Arlington in my head that goes...
We have maps. I'd be happy to provide them to you. I don't have it with me right now,
okay,
but we do have boundaries.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not more than a quarter mile off of each street, but we can get you the maps with the exact locations.
Okay. Yeah, I would like that in your spare time. Thanks. All right, committee members. Any committee members? Councilwoman or Councilman Swirsky.
Well, could you, in order to understand those two hotspots in context, why they were chosen, what about the rest of the city? Is there a breakdown of violent crime and some ranking? I mean, besides the two. My ward has had a couple of incidents recently with violence.
Yeah, I think recently. Each area in the city has had their residents touched by violent crime, but we tried to focus on categorizing, identifying two areas where if we did a focused effort, if we did something in collaboration with federal partners, can we see measurable results? And then if we can do that, can we duplicate that in other areas? So we had to pick two areas. They're across town from each other. They just happen to be the most prolific areas for gun violence. So these were driven by incident reports of citizens calling in with actual incident reports or just calls for service as well, but dealing with gun violence. So they were chosen two areas where we collaborate and see if we can get some type of measurable results.
All right, so you're describing to me the factors that went into your decision to pick these two hotspots. Do you have, some other information, compiled profiles of other areas that if you had more money, you could work on those areas too?
Yeah, I mean, if we had more resources and money, sure, we could approach other areas, but what we have, these are the two areas that we wanted to focus on to see if we can get a measurable result.
Good
They are
questions.
impacted far more than anywhere else in the city. So these two areas need to be addressed. They need to have some attention. That's where we need to be, where the crime is occurring. So more gun violent crime occurs there, so that's why we chose to be there.
Thanks, good questions. Committee members, Councilwoman Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I probably have a lot of questions you probably wouldn't be able to answer here, just based on how much intel you want to share. $93,000. Are there other dollars to supplement what you're doing? And here's a add-on. Who are the partners that you're working with? And is there a plan for what the hows and twos to interrupt gun violence in these two areas? And is that split equally between the two hot spots?
We're applying for a grant that they didn't tell us how much we would be awarded. So what we put in for was $93,000. We might not be awarded $93,000. That's our wish list. That money allows us to focus on these areas, primarily with overtime. We can't afford to take away from our normal calls for service, the normal police business. This will be extra attention. As I mentioned earlier, we partner with the FBI, the ATF, Adult Parole Authority, and the Summit County Prosecutor's Office.
So is there like a plan, because you've identified two hot spots, right? So I'd imagine that there's a plan for how you're
Yes.
trying to interrupt that.
And obviously, the amount of money we get will take that plan in different directions. There's an overview, and that part is the community engagement part, and then also some enforcement. But how we go about actually doing those things, we won't know until we get actual dollars that we can match with our efforts.
So is the money, because it doesn't seem like a whole lot when we talk about overtime. So is this seed money sort of to elicit from the community some of their thoughts or ideas about how we interrupt? It doesn't seem like a whole lot of money for, I guess that's what I'm wondering, kind of like what the plan is.
Like I said, it depends on how much we end up getting. Between 8 communities, there's $500,000. So if they give us $20,000, then we'll work with that. If they give us $100,000, we'll work with that. But part of it is a community engagement. We want to meet people in the community. We want to spend time with them, understanding what their issues are and how we want to address it. Then there'll also be an enforcement action. But that depends. It's going to be overtime driven, so it's going to depend on the money. I can't tell you we're going to do X if I don't know how much we're going to get. That's all. We're just waiting to get the result.
So I know this is not your beef, but, I guess at this hour, teaser money doesn't seem, it's not something I really would want us to do. $93,000 ain't enough, so $20,000, it just really is going to be less than a drop in a bucket. So for your plan, your plan, you have two hot spots, right? And the plan is working already, I assume, in collaboration with ATF, FBI, and whomever.
This is a separate plan that builds upon what we already do every day, regardless of whether we get this grant. We focus on data-driven initiative. We have offenders identified that we partner with that we want to pursue in federal prosecutions. We work areas of the city every day and focus on problems. Our crime analysts will bring up patterns and trends that they see. So this is in addition to the normal police work that we do every day.
So the only reason why I'm asking, officer, is because we've identified specifically two areas. I would imagine, to my colleague's point, I know there's probably other parts of the city where we have probably not as intensive profile, but still a profile nonetheless dealing with gun violence. So my hope was that there's a plan because you've identified two.
Yeah,
specific to those.
This is addition to what we do normally, and every day we go over reported areas of gun violence. And just because we're on this grant, we've identified our two most busiest areas, doesn't mean that we don't have attention focused on other areas every single day throughout the city.
Can I add something?
Sure.
So I just wanted to read a very short paragraph here that I think will help illustrate. In 2018, the Anti-Violence Bureau, which is part of the Akron Police Department, increased its efforts to successfully refer appropriate gun-related cases for federal prosecution and to maintain data related to those referrals. As a result, we increased the number of cases by over 100% as compared to the previous year. So we're already doing this. This would allow us to increase the number of bodies that are involved in this process, and I think the results will be more federal prosecutions and ideally, eventually, a reduction in gun violence in these two areas. If we pilot these models and they are successful, we can certainly look at other parts of the other council districts.
So then I'm gonna withdraw because I don't think I'm gonna get it, maybe I'm just fishing too deeply. So it's always my concern, an over-policing of community, over-policing, partners, whatever. That's why I'm asking specifically about the 2 hot spots that we've identified. I know we didn't think $20,000 was going to move the needle in trying to interrupt gun violence. So is there an overall plan where there's additional dollars? I know there's things that we do in the day-to-day operations of the department, but because we went to the lengths to identify 2 hot spots, it seems to me, at least, that that there is a plan specific to those hot spots, that we're in the process able to develop best practice so that we can get at the other parts of the cities eventually where we have increased activities around the issues of gun violence.
Yes, we work the whole area of the city every day. We seized over 815 guns last year. That's throughout the entire city for people who illegally possessed. We look for grant opportunities to help increase things. We don't over-police. That's why I mentioned part of this is the community initiative, to talk to them so they can understand what we do and how we do it and why we do it, and also to get their input on what their expectations are from us. That's the collaboration that we're doing.
Allow me the opportunity just to share one anecdote. Today around 11:30-ish or so, I got tasked by the president to go check on something over in Ellet. There was an individual who pointed a gun at someone, and as a result of that, there were 3 guns that were confiscated as a result of us working the entire city. So it does happen. Clearly it happens all over the city with the focus of those 2 hot spots that we can replicate, as the major said.
So here's this is my promise to let it go, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, okay. Keep that promise.
When I say over policing, because we've had this conversation, we've identified specific hotspots that we know that are in the news all the time. Those same areas are the same areas where you have, to me, an oversaturation of highway patrol, too. So I guess it's a state route. Is that the understanding? That's why we have them there. I think I've been ticketed at least 3 times for tinted windows or what have you. So specific to these areas, again, I would think, so that that we're monitoring that in the process too, that there's not the over-policing in the community, that there are additional resources outside the potential $20,000 to $93,000, and that we have a plan specific to these areas for the purpose of interrupting gun violence. That's
I don't know. We've been pretty clear about the plan and what we plan on doing. As over policing concern, you know that I feel that it can't be a concern. We're not going to do that. The police division is going to work with the community partners as part of what we would call constitutional policing. They need to give us the ability to govern how we police, and that will be part of that. So I think it's important that we highlight or eliminate that as much as we possibly can. So there is a plan.
All right, thank you. Moving on, any other committee members? Councilwoman Keith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you tell me if we've ever applied for this before in the past for this particular one?
This is the first time that it's been offered to us.
And so not knowing what we will get, let's say your wish list major comes through and you are granted the full amount. If I noted here that it says 18-month project, let's say 9 months into it, you see that it's under control, that there's marked differences, might there be a chance that you would move what you are doing into another hot spot? Or is it by the grant itself that you must, whatever you identified, you must follow through for the entire 18 months of the grant?
My suspicion is that if we meet considerable success in the first 2 hotspots and we want to try to transport some of those activities elsewhere, we would have a conversation with the funders and say, we'd like to do this. I think there's some flexibility there, but we wouldn't be able to do it without going to them and having a conversation.
Thank you. I have one last question, Mr. Chair. I have a little concern. I'm so glad that we are attempting to get this grant. Thank you, Carol, for all the work you've done on that. My concern is, I know with speeders that we have a hard time getting policemen to do overtime. They're doing so much overtime in their areas. That, to me, that's a concern. How will you work with that, do you feel, with getting our officers to consent to additional overtime when there seems like there's a lot out there and we can't accommodate all of it?
I mean, staffing is an issue. Of course, we hope to have our own academy up and running. This grant lasts 18 months, and so hopefully within the next, by next March, we have our first large class that's come out, and those additional people, of course, help support this. Primarily, this is going to be ran through the Anti-Violence Bureau. That's their passion, so I don't think we'll have a concern about filling the overtime spots.
Thank you.
Questions? Thanks, Councilwoman. Any other questions? Well, I was going to move on to other council members since you already asked, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right, I'll call on you. Councilman Swirsky, go ahead.
Just want to make sure that we all understand this is for sort of community policing type activities in working with partners and working with the residents. It's not exactly paying overtime for more police to be out on the street, or is it? It is for both?
It's for both.
It would be both.
Just going by what's written, trying to, okay.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman Samples, please.
Thank you. I have a question. Does this legislation include any increased cameras in this grant? You know, I think we should have drones, but that's probably for another piece of legislation. But will it do something about the cameras? Because I know myself and James Hardy, we did tour Arlington Street and we did visit these hot spot areas, and I know we talked about the ones on Arlington and Lovers Lane, and I know those ones have helped a lot, but will this include adding some cameras to it, or will that come through something else later down the road?
This is only for overtime, no equipment.
Okay, so just pay overtime. So will the Anti-Violence Bureau be partnering with our NRT guys, especially if they're talking about in community partnerships and reaching out into the neighborhood? Will they work, so they're not over, you know, we don't want them stepping on each other. You've got one already out there in the neighborhood as part of their job detail. Now we have another group out there for overtime or whatever it's for, duplicating services.
No, there won't be any duplication.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Neal, please, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, to Mr. Swirsky's point, I think something council may want to look at and see if we have the ability to work with the administration on. You know, we didn't know that the incoming governor was going to raise the gas tax for infrastructure improvements. I forget how many millions of dollars that's going to mean to the city of Akron. Of course, we don't have control over that, but we do have influence over the issue $4, which were specifically raised for safety forces and infrastructure. That may be an area where we can look to bring more funding into whatever plan we have. My concern when I read this is, and it's my concern whenever I see something that's grant related, my belief is if it's our plan, it's not dependent on if we get the funding. that's our plan, and come hell or high water, we're going to find a way to accomplish our plan. My concern with this is alternatives not receiving grant money for this project. So does that mean if we don't receive the grant, we're not going to continue with our plan? Because if that's the case, this isn't really a plan. This is an opportunity to get some grant dollars, to take, to work on, I'm not saying we don't have a goal to work on it, but this isn't really our plan. If the grant dollars don't come through, that means we're not going to initiate it. So that's the one thing. The other thing is, to my colleagues' concerns, the key, and Deputy Safety Director, this goes back to when you, how many years ago was that? 6, 7 years ago, Ms. Sims, Councilwoman Sims, when we had the interrupter discussion over at Akron General. Yeah, we know what the answer is. We've got to empower the community to be able to address the issue. We've got to give them the tools and the support.
Okay, I certainly agree. I think the mayor talked about us committed to doing the same types of things. These dollars would give us some more money, more resource, more capacity to do it. So it is the plan. So this, again, I'll repeat it, gives us an opportunity to have more capacity to be able to commit to that.
Please, don't get offended when I say...
No, I'm not.
Because what I'm saying is, if this money doesn't come in, the part of, as Councilman Swirsky said, engaging the community, and you know, we've had several meetings with the community's still waiting. There's certain things that we need to be able to empower the community to be able to do. So all I'm asking is that, you know, as this comes through, a major portion of this is just the community knowing that it has the support. And I think the dollars will go further if they're invested in community proactive things. And it goes all the way to the discussions about increasing recreational opportunities, engagement, counseling opportunities, interrupter opportunities that are being presented by community members already. So I'm interested in hopefully being able to sit down and learn more about the details of the community engagement piece of the plan, because to all of my colleagues' point, I think that's something that the community can start on, you know, dollars come through or not.
Right, and I would agree with the council person that is important. That's why the police division has committed resources and time and talent and treasure to programs like Neighborhood Dads, our neighborhood response team. That's why we've done those things, because we see that as a key component and will always be that way.
All right, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Councilwoman Omobian.
Just curious, the $93,000, would it be just to pay police officers or all of these other entities that may provide some assistance?
It'll be just for Akron Police Department funds.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, what's your pleasure? What are you thinking on this? Special rules?
I was hoping they could be on the consent agenda.
Oh, consent agenda?
No?
No.
No?
We'd like to suspend the rules if we could.
Yeah, I think that's good,
Okay.
because next Monday, next
Yeah, it's a
Monday,
holiday, right,
It's a
so-
holiday, so.
Motion to suspend the rules?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, with that, we'll put that on, or suspend the rules and pass that this evening. Thanks. We have one more piece before we're out of here, maybe. All right, authorizing the mayor to apply for and if awarded, accepted grant funding through the U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance to support the Akron Sexual Assault Kit Initiative and declare an emergency.
That's going to be Carol again.
Carol?
So this is the one I started talking about first. As most of you are aware, in 2018, we got a Sexual Assault Kit Initiative grant. That was primarily focused on hiring 3 new investigators to focus on cold cases, as well as the sort of infrastructure needs we had to get that unit running. Now we're looking at funding our partners more thoroughly. We're also, so partners would include Victim Assistance Program, Rape Crisis Center, and we're also bringing in Case Western Reserve University as a research and evaluation partner to help us do our job better. So this request covers those things. as well as assistance to the Summit County Prosecutor's Office to build their unit that's working on cold cases.
All right, thank you. I'm not sure if you mentioned this, but on the back it says this would enhance victim services with new positions, including 3.5 victim advocates. Okay. I don't know if you said that or not. I apologize.
I didn't give you the quantities, but
okay.
in our previous proposal, Victim Assistance Program got some funding, so that's why there's a 0.5. So this is both adding additional victim advocates to their organization, as well as Rape Crisis Center, and a therapist at Rape Crisis Center as well. It will also allow the investigators to work some overtime.
Yeah, it says it. Okay, thanks. Any questions, committee members? Councilwoman Sims.
Thank you. I was curious, one, how many cold case rape kits we utilized last year, but more importantly, on this, the staffing, is the lion's share of the $1.9 million for staffing, or are we basically a pass-through for other organizations like victim assistance? Like, so are the 3.5 advocates and the therapists being housed at victim assistance, or is that in the police department?
A lot of it is to our subrecipients, but some of them do work in the Akron Police Department building. They are not Akron Police Department staff.
So our sub organizations, is there more than one?
Yes, there's Victim Assistance Program, there's Rape Crisis Center, and then Summit County Prosecutor's Office is also a subrecipient.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Gert's office. Is
not Gert's.
Gert's, no?
Because this, the severity of the cases dictate it would be a felony.
Okay. So primarily the new staff are in these with the sub-organizations and not with us. And so
correct.
So Alliance, so just out of curiosity, so it looks like, or at least sounds like, we're just a pass-through for the grant.
This is essentially to enhance our team, because the first grant was to create a multidisciplinary team that includes people in the community and not just the police department and not just the prosecutor's office. So most of the funding in the previous grant went to Akron Police Department. This allows us to fund some of the other partners that are part of the team. One of the ways that I tend to think of it is if you think about the number of sexual assault kits that all went to be tested at Ohio BCI and then came back. They're sort of moving through the snake now. And so the Akron Police Department is doing its investigative work, which drives up the number of requests for victim advocacy. Eventually, Summit County Prosecutor's Office is going to have the bulk of the work. So over time, this will probably transition to them.
So I'm really glad to see this. So the 1.9, this is my last question. So this is we're talking about a 3-year plan. Mm-hmm. So does the 1.9 cover the entire 3 years, or will we be applying annually?
1.9 is the cost over the 3 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Councilman Sworsky.
Just quickly, we want to thank you, Carol, for all the work that goes into this. And then I have to thank the Public Safety Director, although I want to make sure here, for recognizing that this is an important issue and a priority for us as a police department and as a city, that we're going to take this on, and that we're working collaboratively. It sounds like, and you did a good job here explaining all the different groups that we're collaborating with. Really appreciate that.
Good, good. Did you want to comment? Go ahead. Oh,
I would just say thank you, and a special thanks to the Police Division's leadership team.
good. What?
The Police Division's leadership team, so.
Yes.
Good. Any other questions or comments, committee members, council members? With that, what's your pleasure? This is suspension of the rules too, or?
Correct.
Consent, okay. Suspension of the rules?
Correct.
Can I get a motion? Motion? Second. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, we'll pass both of those. Carol, thank you. Major, thank you. And Deputy Mayor, thank you. Thanks. We're adjourned.
towards police.
Okay, next we have Parks and Recreation.
That's why I brought up that point. It's not over policing. It's working with communities.
Mr. Hafford, Mr. Gooden, if you don't mind coming up. Please.
Where are we? Hold on. Thank
But I think Mr. Freeman thinks he's in budget and finance, so you might want to tap his shoulder.
We got Park and Rec before that. Oh, okay. Like to call Park and Recreation to order, please. Park and Recreation. All righty. All members are present, and we have, we have minutes from the last meeting. Based on what was discussed, the minutes don't reflect that discussion. So I'm going to ask that we take time on approving the minutes, and we'll go right into the meeting today. Before us, if many of you remember, a couple months back, we had Mr. Hafford, and at that time Mr. Moore, come and share with us about the benefits of our Park and Recreation youth basketball program, and some of the challenges just that come with the economic conditions that a lot of our families that are facing. At that time, we learned that we had increased our fees and that it impacted the ability of some of them to participate. During that discussion, Mr. Hafford and Mr. Moore shared with us the ability of potentially cutting the cost that savings could be transferred to our residents by how we go about officiating those games. Out of that discussion came not only the ability to cut the cost, but also we talk about economics, generating economic opportunities. There became a mentoring opportunity, an economic opportunity, and I just wanted to bring Mr. Hafford and part of his team. I see Mr. Jimmy Gooden is with him, just to come and give us an update. I apologize we're running late, and we've got meetings after this one, so I'm going to have to ask you to give us the elevator speech version, but I want you to share because this is an opportunity for all of us to get youth in our wards engaged in what they're about to do. So, Mr. Hafford, please share with us.
Thank you, Councilman Neal, for allowing me to come back and share with you. There was a time when the city of Akron was the largest giver in the nation to United Way, and that spirit is still alive. And what we're going to do is bring people together that have a giving spirit. Right behind me is Jimmy Gooden. Is going to be that person to train our youth in being basketball officials. So it starts with our East Akron YMCA. They're going to be our administrative agency. Well, we'll be at the East Akron YMCA at 888 Jonathan Avenue. They're going to provide the staff and support. We have the Summit County Summer Youth Employment Program, and they're going to provide our youth to be trained by Jimmy, and they're also going to pay them. And a side benefit of that is, too, we're going to train them to do the coaching. They're going to train them to be mentors to our younger campers. They'll be 5 to 7, 8 to 10-year-olds. The Akron Metropolitan Housing Authority, they're going to cover the cost of their residents. So if they're in Joy Park Homes, Summer Lake Apartments, Mohawk, and other different locations, they'll reimburse us for their costs. The federally funded summer lunch program will feed our kids. So 4 o'clock, we'll bring them in, we're going to feed them, and then we're going to do the mentoring and the life skills activities. New Directions Barbershop, and they're going to donate for some of our kids. And Mr. Dan's Daycare, they're going to donate For all the kids that they put into the program, they're going to pay for them. A new nonprofit to our community, Safer Community Youth and Family Initiatives. They're doing a program right now in Akron Public Schools, and they're going to be donating volunteers. And a lot of those guys are retired Akron firefighters that give back. Team First Basketball, Director Newt Terry, who has a great program in East Akron. His adult staff, they're going to be volunteering and helping us as well. So we put together a great team of community people that are going to give back and help pour into this program. And yes, the young people that graduate from this training will be able to participate as basketball officials for us.
Thank you, Mr. Hafford. So, you know, again, not only are these children learning a skill that can turn into an employment opportunity, there's a new term that's out there called gig economy, where people have 3 or 4 different gigs or jobs that they use. This right here is a profession that that was shared with us last time. There's a crisis of coaches under the age of 50 or is it 60? But there's a crisis. They need new coaches. So because of this program that came out of a discussion that Mr. Hafford and Mr. Moore brought to us, children will be able to be mentored, learn how to referee, then gain employment, and save the city money that we could pass on to our constituents who have children that play in the TOTS program. So I know you came down here, you paid for parking. I don't know if you want to say something, Mr. Gooden. Please come to the mic, thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Jimmy Gooden. I operate Athletes for Better Education in the Joe Sickford Classic. I'm a high school and a college basketball official for 17 years. This is my 17th season. And Mr. Hafford and Mr. Grimes, which I am employed at the YMCA, had approached me about teaching the youth about officiating. And officiating is a great opportunity. It's something I wish I would have done myself when I first got back home from overseas, because the opportunity to make $35,000 to $40,000 as an official. And like I said, if these kids can start off at an early age at 17, and well, I think they're starting at 15 years old now, that they can officiate CYO basketball games and make $11 to $12 a game, and that's only last 24 minutes. So some of these games can go up to, for high school, it's roughly about $90 to $100 a game. So the opportunities for college, some of the officials that you see on TV, they're making $2,500 a game. So if we could get a lot of our youth in to officiating, I think that would be very viable for their employment.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the committee or members of council? Mr. Milkovich? Oh, Ms. Sims? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to say, first of all, just thanks to the Chicken Hawk and to Mr. Hafford, you know, not because you're here today, but that you just didn't wait till you hit retirement to give back. Thank you for the years that you've given to our young folks selflessly, and it has really made a difference. I really never thought about refereeing as a training option where young folks could potentially, especially those who love the game, engage in that way and make a living doing that. So I'm grateful for just the creativity and just the broad thinking about who you can engage as partners to help contribute to the program, and just not looking to the city, but looking at other partners in the community that are concerned about making sure that our young folks have viable options for both recreation and for employment training. So just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Sims. I'm sorry, Mr. Milkovich, Ms. Samples, and then you, sir.
Thank you. A question on the age requirement. What's the age requirement in order for them to get their certification? And this is for young women as well, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So you can actually be certified at age 15.
Oh.
And we'll be hiring young people at the age of 14. They'll go through this training, then at 15 they can get certified.
Wow, okay, thank you. It's good to know.
Mr. Milkovich?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a thought and a comment. First, I want to thank my good friend Jimmy Gooden for all you do for our young men and women. And Mr. Gooden is also a West Akron Kiwanis member. And this past year, he had a camp over at Higher Elementary School, and it was both females and male. And I remember he brought in a young lady who's also a referee, and she asked a question to the young females there, is like, how many would like to be in the NW, the World Basketball League? And they all raised their hand. And she said, well, how many would like to be a referee? One lady raised her hand until she told them how much they're getting paid. So they all raised their hand after that. And I think we need to get that information out there. It could be a great career for some of these young men and women. And again, Jimmy, I want to thank you for all you do for our children.
Thank you, Mr. Milkovich. Ms. Mobian?
I don't think I can add much to that. I just ditto everything that's been said by Councilwoman Sims and Councilman Milkovich. It's something that I hadn't even envisioned for myself, although I've never been very athletic. But I think this is just wonderful. It's just broadening the field of how many our children can go to, because there's so many opportunities out there. So thank you very much.
Anyone else from council? Mr. Hafford, do you have any closing remarks, sir? I do have one question for you.
No, just thank you for giving me an opportunity to be here. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to be here and to work with you. And I'm looking forward to us maybe getting together when these kids actually complete this program and just recognizing them.
Sure, that'd be great to have them come through. I would ask, I know you emailed me something, whatever information that we may be able to get out in our ward meetings, because when does the program start?
We're going to start June the 10th.
June 10th. So most of us will still have a chance to get that out to our residents by one way or the other. If you can get that to us, we may even be able to post it on our city council website, perhaps, maybe, letting folks know that they can get their children in there, because I know every parent can appreciate when their child can make some spending change. So, okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. If there's nothing else to come before us, motion to adjourn, please. Second. All in favor? Okay, thank you. We're adjourned.
Public utilities. We're next, right? Starting in 30 seconds. Hey, Holly, can you see if Mr. Hoke is back there? Over here. Can you see if Mr. Hoke is back there? Thanks. Oh, yeah. I don't even need to look.
We got one more committee and then we'll be up.
All members are present. If I could get a motion for the acceptance of our last meeting minutes, please.
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay. So we have two pieces in front of us. The first one is ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee, after publicly advertising for bids, to enter into a contract or contracts for the purchase and installation of a new water pump and motor at the Akron Water Reclamation Facility and declaring an emergency. Mr. Lettle?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Currently, we have 3 pumps down at the WRF plant, and we're going to replace one of them. It's 21 years old. We've rewound the bearings a few times, and the staff down there feel like it's time to replace it. So we are going to purchase it and install it ourselves. There will be a factory rep there on site when we install it, but we'll be doing all the work.
Okay. Any questions from committee members?
The staff at the plant? Probably not. Yeah. I'd love to, but no, probably not.
Any questions from council members? What's your pleasure?
Consent's fine.
Can I get a motion for consent?
Motion for consent.
Can I get a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next one, ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee, after publicly advertising for bids, to enter into a contract or contracts to construct an enhanced raw water pretreatment facility and declaring an emergency. Mr. Leto?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. This project with me today is Ken Crisp from the water plant, and an intern we have from Akron is Emmeline Thompson. She's working with us on this project. This project is to build a new facility up by our dam. Currently, we pump what we call a slurry of this powder activated carbon. We have 60,000 gallon tanks that we pump at about a half mile upstream, and then it enters into the tank. So we've been working on this for a few years, and this building will allow us to distribute it in a 500 gallon slurry instead of 60,000, which will give us a lot better control. Powder activated carbon, as you know, is for taste and odor, but it also helps us fight the harmful algal blooms. So this project qualifies for a 0% interest loan through the state. It's a 20-year loan that will be paid back through the Water Capital Fund.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? $4 million. How big is this? Is this a tank?
It's a whole building.
It's a building.
So the powder activated carbon and the other chemical, which is potassium permangate, will be delivered right to the building.
How long will it take to construct something like that?
About 1 year.
Is it,
Mr. Swirsky?
I don't know. Are there like, describe the carbon, does it look like your fish tank where you put a little bit of carbon in a pump and it helps filter? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I mean,
on a bigger scale?
I mean, if you're familiar with what lamp black, the carbon, the powder, how messy it is, that's what it's like.
It's a powder.
It comes in containers, and then we mix it into the water, yes.
And it helps filter the...
Taste and odor, and then helps with the harmful algal blooms, which we probably spend $800,000 or $900,000 a year in powder activated carbon.
So that helps reduce the odors.
Taste and odor, eliminates
Taste and
those,
odor.
but it's also for the harmful algal blooms that we've been experiencing.
That are actually toxic.
Well,
Or
it all
how-
depends.
Okay.
Yes,
So it's pretty important that we do.
very important.
Mr. Freeman?
I just had one question, really doesn't have to do with the legislation passage. The word used, permanganate or?
Yes.
Okay.
That's for irons, that type of thing. So once it gets in there, it helps those things settle out.
Okay.
So as it goes down through our water and gets into our basins, it helps coagulate and lets those things settle out, and then we pump them out.
And the location of this facility is where again?
It's going to be up by our dam. So you've been at the plant, and you know the dam is about a half mile up from our plant. So the building's going to be up by the plant. Currently, we mix it down by the plant, and we pump it up through a series of pumps, and it gets clogged, and it's a lot of maintenance by having it that far away.
This has to be a pretty exciting project for you then.
He looks excited.
It's great for the utility, it's going to be good for the city.
Fantastic.
Last question, Chris. The funding source, where is this coming from?
Water Capital?
Water Capital?
Yes.
Okay. Any more questions from committee members or council members?
We've already been, the 20-year 0% loan.
Yes.
That's already
Already
approved.
approved.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Sims?
I don't know, I felt like I needed to go to Strickland's after you said slurry. You made it sound like it should be a custard favorite. So the,
That's a flurry.
I knew they sound familiar. I knew they sound similar. So I was like, yes. So the drinking water assistance fund is the same, is that the same fund as the
It's the
other
same
water
fund like when we applied last year, and we got the 0% like to eliminate lead services. And when we get 0%, when we work with other municipalities to eliminate private water systems, okay?
So
So
this
it's the same through Ohio EPA.
So are they, is it specific to clean water?
Yes.
Drinking water? Okay, thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.
I think too, when Ms. Sims talked about slurry, she was actually referring to a Slurpee.
Oh, okay.
Which is totally different.
You wouldn't want to
You
drink
guys
it.
are just hungry, that's all. What's your pleasure, Mr. Leto?
Consent's fine.
Okay, can I get a motion for consent?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. If we don't have anything else coming before us, we are adjourned. You're welcome.
Budget and Finance will meet in about 1 minute. Good luck on your project.
You guys look awful young, Chris. You bet. Roast is yours. Oh, you just. Who we got? Can we make one?
Just need to do 2 pieces.
There's only, oh, okay. Then who's gonna do my job? How you doing? Oh, okay. Thank you. Dibs?
I'd like to call the Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting?
Hello?
Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting?
What's that?
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
For a year, sir.
All right, thank you. We have nothing on the old agenda.
Yeah. I know, so is everybody else.
First item is an ordinance authorizing the mayor as its designee to enter into a contract after publicly advertising for bids for the purchase of sewer and water line insurance and declaring an emergency. Mr. Fricker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a 5-year policy for our underground water and sewer lines. So we last did this in 2014. This will be a new 5-year renewal that will go from May of 2019 through May of 2024. So this is insurance that covers damage from any, if there was an issue with one of our underground water or sewer lines, and the damage associated with that
Damage to?
incident. Damage to other property, both the lines and any other property that might be damaged from leaking water or leaking sewage or anything like that.
Okay.
So it has a $10 million limit for each occurrence and about $1 million deductible on the policy.
Okay.
It's split about 25% to water and 75% to sewer.
Okay. From over the last 5 years, did we surpass our $1 million deductible?
I don't believe we did.
Okay. Okay, very good. All right, questions or comments? Ms. Amobian?
Just curious, when the street caved in over there on Kling or one of those streets over there because of a main water line break or something, if that car had fallen in there, because I think a car had just driven over that spot, would this have covered that, the vehicle?
If the damage would have exceeded our deductible, then yes.
And our deductible is?
I'm sorry?
If the damage would have exceeded our deductible?
Yeah, so we would pay a deductible up to $1 million for each occurrence, and then above that, we would file a claim under the insurance policy.
Up to $1 million?
Correct.
So if the vehicle had fallen in there and was damaged and totally destroyed, this would have covered that vehicle?
Yes.
Yes, okay, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Milkovich?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Stricker, this is just for existing water lines? This doesn't have anything to do with the ongoing construction?
As new lines are built and added to the system, then we would look at the policy to see if we would have a higher premium as a result of having new lines. But yes, it covers the existing lines that we have.
Okay, Ms. Sims?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is these lines specific to just municipality-controlled facilities in downtown or elsewhere?
I believe it's any of the lines that the city owns.
So is there any, since is it like a self-insured policy, so to speak?
It's not really self-insured. It's because there is a deductible, just like there is with any policy, but it does cover, is a policy that's in place to cover damage up and beyond what the deductible amount is.
So here's what I was really question. I was just kind of wondering, was there any consideration, or would it make sense if there was some other folks like covered in this policy, like entities that are part of DAP or county facilities that are downtown? Would that make sense to include them? And I think about some of the self-insured insurance policies. Like
well, like for instance, for our medical claims, we're self-insured up to a point, and then we have a policy for high claim individuals. But we pay typically for our medical benefits, we pay the claims ourselves. So we are self-insured for that, for medical claims.
Until it reaches a certain threshold?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so I guess maybe it's a wonky question. Like, would it help impact cost if other entities like Downtown Akron Partnership members were a part of this policy, or is that something we just don't want to?
The city of Akron owns all of the lines, all the water and sewer lines that exist within the city, so there wouldn't be anyone else really involved for these assets that we're insuring.
So, So, say in the middle of downtown, that we had some damaged lines that went to one of the businesses that are in DAP. Are those covered, and if they're covered, do they share in the cost in some other way for the policy?
Well, if the damage is caused by one of our water, so if one of our water lines ruptured and flooded a business, and, so those would be covered under this policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fricker, this right here seems similar to the policy that a lot of our residents subscribe to. I know, like through the National League of Cities, they advertise the water line insurance. Is this like the same thing but for cities, or how?
It's the same thing, except it's basically covering the liability from the damage that one of our water lines or sewer lines would cause to property that may or may not be owned by the city.
Okay.
So if the example I just gave, if one of our water lines ruptured and flooded out, 5 or 6 homes or a number of businesses or something like that, it would cover the cost of the damage that was done to those properties. Whereas the water line insurance that residents buy is really just covering the replacement of that line into their house should it fail.
Right. Just piggybacking on what Councilwoman Sims said, from the standpoint of cost, I mean, is this like something that's offered, well, our rate is lower because other municipalities are a part of it, or if not, could it be if we went through one of our associations or if we were working with other cities, get a lower rate?
I know that the rate is staying approximately the same as what it has been, so it's approximately between $35,000 and $38,000 a year, which is similar to what we paid over the last 5-year cycle.
That's relatively cheap. That's real cheap when you think about if you flood out.
And that's because the risk of loss up and beyond that $1 million deductible is relatively, there's a low risk of that.
Okay. All righty. Just up. Thank you.
So it's kind of like a catastrophic health policy.
Correct. I mean, it's put in place to, to protect the city in case there was a major incident.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Fricker, what would be your desire on this?
We would ask for suspension of the rules on this one.
Okay, very good. So I'm looking for a motion to suspend the rules. And I have a motion, a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Also, for the record, all members are present. Our second item, thank you very much. Our second item is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Finance or her designee to pay $50,000 to support the planning and implementation of the 2019 Akron International Soapbox Derby and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the City of Akron's annual contribution to the Soapbox Derby. We do have Mark Erbridge here to give a little bit of an update on the Derby.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here in front of you. I'm with Doreen Thorne, who's our Director of Marketing, and we just put together a small packet for you. There's 4 items in there. First is a strategic plan, which we're really, really proud of. It really goes to who the Derby is and what we're about. And 3 of our major initiatives are really, really important to the city of Akron. The first one is strengthening our race cities so that we can start growing those back and we can get more people coming here to the World Championships each year. Second is putting together a business plan for our education program. And then the third one, and we need everybody's help, is how do we get everybody to come back and watch the Derby again? So those are the 3 big initiatives, and they're in that strategic plan. The other one is the annual report, but I want to really draw your attention to the 3rd sheet in the packet, which is just a highlight of everything that goes on at the Derby. As you know, back in the day, the track was only used one time a year. So we're glad to be part of Ward 6 and what Bob's doing, and he's a great partner for us. But we have 81 event days a year at the track. And that is providing opportunities for people in the underserved community, a bunch of community days for seniors and veterans and inclusive people to get down the track. So we're doing about 10,000 trips down the track each year. But we're also an asset for the community. So the way I think about it is if every place that wants to hold a concert in town is packed, Lock 3 is being used, and the convention center, think about using the Derby as a concert location. Last fall, we had a Halloween party, which more than 10,000 people attended. In the day, nobody would even think about using the Derby that way. The education side of this is so important. This past weekend, we had 150 teams come from all over the country to participate in our STEM education race. So it was a really cool race. 1,500 kids out there running around from New York, all over Ohio, and great opportunity for kids to learn STEM and also utilize our track. The World Championships are July 20th, and there will be more than 400 champions coming to town this year. So think about it, right? You know, your $50,000 investment is really helping us bring those families to Akron for vacation for a week. They're getting here the Saturday before and they're not leaving until the Sunday after the race. So it's really a cool opportunity for us. Our STEM education programs are really impacting our city students in a number of different ways. Every 8th grade class this year had Soapbox Derby mini car programs in the classroom, along with a tabletop wind tunnel and a tabletop 3D printer. So you talk about experiential learning opportunities for our students, and that's a really great way to impact them. But also we just, and it's Doreen's doing, and we have a meeting with the county after to get approved for a CDBG grant, but Huntington got a nice grant from Huntington, which impacted Urban League, Urban Vision, the Children's Museum, and Launch Kenmore. But we're also working with the Boys and Girls Clubs and SAYL South Akron Leadership Program, and Emmanuel Christian just participated in this past week. So I know you guys are behind, but if I can just divulge you for just a couple more minutes. Our staff is part of this community. We're really proud that we've committed 300 hours of volunteering this year. We followed a model that another not-for-profit in town follows. We're really busy all summer, but then during the winter we volunteer. So we did about 300 hours, soup kitchens, food, homeless, and United Way, really helping be involved with the community. The other thing is our board continues to evolve from a diversity standpoint, from age, from profession, from gender, from ethnicity. We now have 4 women on our board. We now have 2 African Americans on our board, and that's really, really important to what we're doing and impacting the community. The last page in your folder, you want to pull it out, and if you look really closely, it's the first time that the Derby's really investing back into the track. And so if you look really closely, right under the finish line, there's a bunch of numbers, you know, and it shows, you know, the times of the track. So we're ordering a new scoreboard that's going to be put in next month and be used for the All-American. It's a really cool thing for me because what games do you go to that there's not a scoreboard? So this is the first scoreboard. It's a 3-year plan to invest more than $100,000 into scoreboards. But that's really, really important to us. We appreciate what you guys are doing for us, but we're not standing on just the money that we're getting from the city. For the first time, we're asking individual donors. We're getting more grants. She's only been doing this 6 months, and she'll have set a record of more grants for the Soapbox Derby this year than any other year. And then our Corporate Derby Challenge is our major fundraiser during the year. First Energy continues to be a partner for the Soapbox Derby. They're committed on the sponsorship side, volunteer side, and board representation. But I need to tell you one more thing about the coolest thing going on with Soapbox Derby. Is you've all heard of the driverless car. So we want to be a feeding stop for that. So all the kids in the education program are learning coding in the classroom. So we're starting to launch the autonomous car program. So there's going to be another competition coming in both small cars and large cars, which is the autonomous car. So proud to be the president and CEO of the Soapbox Derby. As some of you know, I'm really committed to Akron. I've lived here 35 years. I've raised my kids here. Really proud of what we're accomplishing. We use a thing called #momentum. If you've been following us on social media and in the newspapers, you can see we've had some successes. We're thankful for your guys' support. We would love for all of you to come out and be part of our parade, July 15th downtown, or if you need tickets to bring friends and family to the event on July 20th, we would love to have you for the World Championships. I'm open for any questions. Thanks for allowing me the time.
Questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Mobian?
Mr. Fricker, if you could tell me of the last few years, how much have we donated each year to Soapbox Derby?
I looked on our accounting system, so we've donated something every year going back at least to 1997. I'm sure well before that, but that's when our accounting system started. I don't have the total of all those years. We've been doing 60,000 for the past few years. This year is 50,000.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I thought it was a reduction. I was uncertain, though. Thank you.
Mr. Neal? You had your hand up first as well.
He really didn't. He just jumped out in front of me. I just want to say thank you for your passion for the work. You know, the Soapbox Derby has such a nostalgic place, I think, in the hearts of most of us grew up in Akron. I think our biggest rooting cheerleading section was for the Decatur's. Every time they won, we didn't even get to be we were there at the Derby, but they won. It was like, I mean, sparks went out in the city. So thank you for that. I actually got my first opportunity to ride in a car with Leadership Akron in 2015. And what a phenomenal experience. And thank you, you know, as we look at how we become a more friendly senior city, that you designate a day for our seniors to engage in ways they probably never thought they would be able to. But even today, even how you kind of were blocking for your staff person just to tell me what a great job that she does just in a short period of time. You know, we love girl power here. So I thank you for that. But just your pure passion today, beautiful, and thank you. And I'm glad, too, that you're the CEO of the Derby.
Mr. Neal?
Thank you for this report, bringing us up to date. I really do appreciate this. I got excited, and I'm here to lobby on behalf of my school, Buchtel CLC, who one of their community partners is Goodyear. I don't know if Goodyear is a sponsor of this or not, but if they're not, they hopefully they will be. I'd like to work with you, because I tell you why I'm coming. I was excited to hear about the coding and everything, but last week or 2 weeks ago, we had University of Akron, their eSport team in here, talking about eSports. And the thing that ran through my mind is, wow, what if there was a online version of this? And the reason why I mentioned Goodyear, I was watching, Forbes magazine actually has an eSport business section in their magazine. And they were talking about Goodyear and the expense of actually going out on the track and racing on the track, how expensive it is. So what they did is they created these simulators. Now here's where I'm trying to connect the dots. I had to go around the street, up the block to get to this point. They talked about, in creating those simulators, they actually created a new sport, which is virtual driving, and they have teams that race. I was like, man, wouldn't this be great if kids actually create the game, but then around the country, young and old, people could race down Derby Hill just with their on their Xbox. So the reason why I'm coming to you is because I want to work with you to work with the greatest asset in my ward, which is Buchtel High School, and one of their community partners, which is Goodyear, to see if we can get a virtual aspect to the Derby race. You can use it in your STEM education component. It can be another potential, hopefully, revenue generator down the line once all the bugs are worked out. But I'm coming to lobby. I got your business card. I need your information. I'm coming to lobby on behalf of Buchtel High School and work with you to get Goodyear involved so we can partner.
That would be great. So just 2 weeks ago, Goodyear held a STEM Fest at Firestone High School, 850 kids. It was awesome. Kids were really engaged in the opportunity. And so, as you know, we don't have Goodyear in the Derby for 1 penny yet, right now, which is just kind of crazy to all of us that live here in this town. But we're starting a relationship again, and so we would welcome your help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Hope?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, just appreciate everything that is done over there all year long. It's a process, a year-long process over there that you people go through over there, and do so many things for the community and you know, for our city, and of course, I mean, this is known nationwide, so it's huge with the program there. A lot different look over there since we got you know, some of the old rubber bowl out of the way, and you know, what it looks like, and the safety factor with everything there also, and certainly do appreciate being able to get that area of it taken care of, and Finish Line Park, and you know, a lot of really neat things coming up, and you know, looking at the future, and hopefully you can get the sponsorship and include the people that need to be in there and should be in there, and we appreciate everything that you do there, and thank you very much for being here today.
Ms. Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark, they got the right person for the job. Your love, your commitment, your vision, coupled with the family that you have surrounded yourself with at work. And I know it's a family over there. I've seen you guys together. That's what makes this symphony so beautiful. And that's why you will continue to grow and to encompass more than you ever visioned on that first day when you walked in there, because you're family. And Mr. Councilman Hoke, you have been a huge advocate. Mark mentioned that, but I have to tell you, with the rubber bowl and with other things that were happening over there, you've always had a finger on it. So I thank you for your advocacy that you've had for the Derby, even when you guys may not have known, but you are very well aware. So true champion of the Derby in Councilman Hoke, but the exact right person to be leading it and heading up. So as everyone has said here that knows the city, we are the fortunate ones, because we know that it almost left us, this Derby, and it took a lot of hard work. And also, I think you just gave us a benchmark that we may start holding others to that come in and we give them money, and that is by the volunteer hours you're giving back to our city. I'm not really quite sure that I've ever asked anybody that before, but I want to thank you for bringing that to my attention. It'll be on the forefront now, so thank you so much.
You should feel pretty good after all these comments. We recorded it, by the way, if you want to play it on a bad day. So. I've been on council for 17, 18 years, and the transition I see here is we used to be looking for this one big week in summer, and then I see 78 event days. Yeah, that's fantastic. And to you, as the development person, you're working on a nice little, I'm in development myself, and you're working on a nice little list here. Keep at it. Have you all ever considered endowment? Just
So we're just getting started, right? You know, the crazy part of this is that the Soapbox Derby, before I got there, never asked people for individual donations. You know, so the track record is in 2017, we got $18,000. Last year, for the first time, you know, with our campaign, we got $65,000, and we'll raise more than $100,000 in individual donors this year. So in next year's business plan will be endowments. There's a couple out there. We've gotten a couple small ones, and there's a couple people that have endowed right now, but really going after it intentionally is really a big part of where we're going in the future too. So
excellent. Thank you for your good work. Suspension of the rules, or can we put this on the consent agenda?
If you'd like to do it tonight, that would be great, or consent. If you-
Okay, we'll go ahead and ask for a motion for suspension of the rules. I have a motion, a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Opposed? All right, very good. Mark, thank you so much. We'll pass this out this evening. Thank you.
Number one and number three.